Hi Stampers, this is Kim with Great Inspirations, and I have a question for you. Do you have a lot of background stamps sitting on your shelf? I do. They all have images that I like, but I just so rarely use them, and I really don't know why. So I thought today I would dust these off and make some cards and share with you some of the ideas I came up with for using background stamps. And as most of you know, a background stamp, it's a rather large stamp. I forget the exact measurement of the Stampin' Up! Ones, but I know when I stamp them, I use a 1/4 sheet of cardstock, which would be 5.5 by 4 1/4. And then if I want to cover my entire card front with the image, I can, or I can cut it down. So we're going to start with this Berry Harvest stamp set, and I'll show you a couple cards I made. There's this one and this one. Now this one is honestly very basic. I simply stamped the image, and in this case I used Early Espresso ink. Then I colored it in with Stampin' Blends, the alcohol markers. I know, you're thinking, Kim, no, we're supposed to use Tuxedo Black. We're supposed to use the Memento Tuxedo Black. Yes, that works. But many of the Stampin' Up! Ink colors also work. I will confess I have not tried them all, but I have used Mossy Meadow, Night of Navy, Blackberry Bliss, Early Espresso, and Crumb Cake. I know for sure I have used those colors to stamp and then color with the alcohol markers. And then to get this blue background, I just used a blending brush and my Azure Afternoon ink pad and blended the color right on it. And it's okay. It is okay to do that. It doesn't bother the alcohol ink. I'll show you. I have a panel right here that is stamped and colored with the alcohol markers. And I have my blending brush, and I have my Azure Afternoon, and I'm just going to stamp some of this ink right on a block because this pad is really juicy. It's new. And then I'm going to get some ink on this brush and then just start putting the ink on my card panel. As you can see, it does just fine. You can just continue and color over the entire panel, and you can add as much or as little as you like. And if you would like, you could also take a paper towel or a cloth and just go over it when you're done to get any ink that may be someplace you don't want it. And that is how I did the background for this card. And I also, let me put that away, I also created an envelope for this card, and I did it the exact same way. I just stamped the flap of the envelope, colored it in, and then went over it with the blending brush and ink. And I will show you how I stamped that on there without getting ink everywhere. I just took a piece of printer paper, folded it in half, and I folded it in half for, I learned a lesson. Instead of just putting my envelope flap here and having my envelope on my workspace, I folded it in half so this is perfectly clean, because the first time I did this, I got ink all over the front of my envelope. There was some ink on my work surface that I didn't realize was there. So then the next thing we're going to need, of course, is the stamp. And I just put this on the largest acrylic block, and then I inked it up, and I think I inked that one with Early Espresso. I need to reach over here and get it. There it is. You could ink it with any color you want. Blackberry Bliss would even be a nice color. But because I was going to color it in, I just used the Early Espresso. And yes, if you have a stamping platform, you could also do this on a stamp platform. But flip it over and just press down. And there's our image ready to color. And there's no mess and no ink on the front of my envelope. So that's all I used was this piece of folded printer paper. And then I can use this for other things, of course. So let's look at that second card I had. And here it is. And for this one, I simply stamped the image on my basic white cardstock. And then I took 2 circle dies. The smallest of the 2, I cut a hole. Just cut a die cut right here. And that is the piece I used here. This is called a spotlight technique. And I colored that in. Then I used the largest circle die and the die I used to cut this. And I made a frame. So we have the card base, then we have our mat that was stamped. Then I put down the frame, and then I put this, after I colored the image, I put some dimensionals on it and put it right in the place where it came from. And then I used a couple smaller dies, of course, to make a greeting that mirrors this image. So this one just stamped and colored, did a little blending brush, and this one I did, well, I guess you could call it a modified spotlight technique. And yes, I made an envelope for this card. That's kind of my thing these days. And that's all I did. I just stamped just like I showed you with the Early Espresso. I just stamped the image on there, but this time I used the Blackberry Bliss. So there are those 2 cards, and we'll just move them over here. And now let's talk a little bit, I'm dropping things here, about It's in the Stars. This one, I was happy to see this because I thought it would work well with the Reach for the Stars stamp set that is, came out in the current annual catalog. And this was a new background stamp. So I made a couple of cards with it. Here's one of them. I used the Reach for the Stars dies to create my planets. But all I did, I simply stamped this with the Tuxedo Black ink. And then I used blending brushes and 3 colors of ink. And I didn't really do an ombre. I just did some different, I went across sort of diagonally and added some different color and then blended them. I believe there's Lost Lagoon and Pretty Peacock, which you can tell that's right here, and then the Pool Party. So sort of 3 colors that are sort of the same, but just different shades. And so that was super fast and easy. Just stamped it, used the blending brushes, put the color on, and then cut it down and matted it and put it on the card. Now the next card I made, it was fairly easy too. All I did was I took my cardstock and I went over it with an embossing buddy. And if you don't have an embossing buddy, it's just an anti-static little tool. If you don't have that, just take an old white sock or something, cut it off, cut most of the top off, put some either cornstarch or baby powder in it, tie a rubber band around the top, and you have an embossing buddy. But that's all I did. I simply went over it with that, used Versamark ink or embossing ink to stamp on my image. Then I covered it with clear embossing powder, and then I used a blending brush and I put on the ink, and of course I just added a sentiment, so that was pretty quick and easy. So those are the two cards I made with It's in the Stars. And for both of their envelopes, I simply, for this one I used the black, but for this one I used the Starry Sky, and I did the same process that I showed you with the Berry Harvest stamp set. So we'll go on to the next two cards. Okay, so for these two cards, I pulled out one of my favorite background stamps. This came out maybe last year or maybe even before, but I absolutely have had a ball working with this one. I have pulled this out more than I usually do with my background stamps. But this time I want to do something similar but different from what I've done in the past. So I created this card. And it was, pretty quick and easy. Honestly, the thing that took me the longest was die cutting my letters. But all I did was I stamped the image with Poppy Parade. And then I just took some blending brushes and did what I've done on several of the other cards. I just added some more color. There's some pumpkin pie, and there's some, I think I used Daffodil Delight, but I might have used Crushed Curry. It was one of the yellows. And just added some color on here. Now, you have a choice. You can do what I did, stamp the image and then add the color with the blending brushes. Or on this sample, I did the blending first. And on this one, I did use Pumpkin Pie and Daffodil Delight. And then I stamped the Poppy Parade image. So, either way, it's going to give you a nice background. And then I just cut it down, matted it on the black. Of course, cut out my letters. And these are the Alphabet a la carte dies. And I did put my cardstock. I backed my cardstock with adhesive sheets because that made it so much easier to adhere these to the card. Much easier than using liquid glue. So I popped this up. I wanted to use dimensionals, but I thought, that'd be a lot of dimensionals and there would be a lot of wiggling. So what I did, I just used the foam adhesive strips. They come in a package like this, and there are a lot of them. And this is what they look like right here. This one I've cut down, but I simply put it on the back here, one here, 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 and then I just put a couple in the center. And like I said, I had to cut them down a little, but then it really gives you a nice firm way to pop that up. So there's that card. And let me see, where did I put the second one? There it is. For this one, I wanted to find more of an elegant way, make more of an elegant card. I don't know if I succeeded, but I like it. All I just did some embossing. Again, I used that embossing buddy. Stamped my image with the Versamark, put the gold embossing powder over it, heat set it, cut it down, and then put the black mat under it. I, of course, embossed with gold my happy birthday, and then just put a few of these gold festive pearls on it to kind of finish it up. And that was another quick and easy card that I made using the spiral die stamp. Now there's one more stamp set, and that's the Rays of Light. Now it just took me a long time. I like this, I really like it, but it just took me a long time to really think of something to do with it. So what I did, I just stamped it and looked at the image for a while. And then I came up with this because I still had my alphabet a la carte dies out. I thought, well, let's just make a card with that. So I just cut out letters for Rise and Shine. I cut out a circle to put in the center of this to kind of look like a sun. And then I just put, it's your birthday, happy birthday. And this is what I've trimmed from the panel. So that's one thing I did with the Rays of Light stamp. Now, the next card, I was just looked at it and looked at it. I said, okay, well, I'm going to trim off. I stamped my image, and then I trimmed off, like, I think about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. And I found this is in Lost Lagoon that I stamped it. And then I had this paper from the Inked Botanicals. And I really liked this image with these, so I just put it on a card. Just put a greeting on here. Of course, there's a little bit of ribbon. It's very monochromatic. But I really did like that. But the thing was, I had, you know, like this much of my image left. So, thought, what can I do with that? Well, I got out my inked and tiled stamp set, and I simply took what was left, made it for like a center mat on this cardstock, and I made a panel. And as you can see, I stamped my flower image on there. I put happy birthday, and I used some of our rhinestones that I colored with the basic black dark Stampin' Blend, and just for a little bit of embellishment. So when I originally stamped this panel once, I got 2 cards. So there's those ideas. There's my Rise and Shine, happy birthday with the nice little spiral die. Happy birthday. All these are birthday cards, except for this one. It's a thank you card. And just put that there. And here's my planets. Here's Stellar. That's a birthday card. And of course the 2 cards that I made with my berry harvest. So there's just a few ideas for using background stamps. Now, there will be a link to my corresponding blog post, and on that blog post you will find instructions for how I made these cards. You will find the list of supplies, photos, and more information. So thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time, stamp happy.